when we go out in the community, we are equipped with one, what do they need to know? How do we make sure that they feel empowered and that they are well educated to go to the polls and vote or support someone else to go vote? Our Filipino-Canadian community is unique because many of us are citizens, but many of us are also still not. Some of us are international students or immigrants or migrant workers. And so we are comprised by such a diverse group of people with unique experiences and backgrounds. And we want to make sure that they are equipped in however they would like to contribute civically and engage in this democratic process.
Welcome to Activists Make History. My name is Peggy Nash. I've been a union activist, a feminist advocate, and for nearly a decade, a member of Parliament in Canada's House of Commons. I know what it's like to start from scratch, against the odds, in building a community campaign or running for political office. Our lives are hugely affected by political decisions, but for the underrepresented in political life, Canadian politics can seem like a secret society designed to shut them out. I'm here with a special series from Perspectives, a Canadian journal of political economy and social democracy, to lift the curtain on these electoral mysteries and show the underdogs how we can do it. In Activists Make History, I talk to activists, experts, political leaders, and those like me who've been there and done that, to show you can make real progressive change in how Canadian democracy functions so that we can win a better world through elected office. This episode was also made possible with the generous support of Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union. My guest today is Josel Angelica Gerardo, a Philippine-born, Toronto-raised community organizer known for her leadership in the Filipino-Canadian Civic Action Network and as chair of Pinoys on Parliament. I've known Josel since her time as an undergraduate student at Toronto Metropolitan University. Josel was a student leader there. She was head of the Student Association and also very involved in democratic engagement, especially urging women and non-binary students to become active in politics. Josel, welcome to Activists Make History. It's great to see you outside of TMU and outside of City Hall. Welcome.
Thank you, Peggy. Happy to be here.
And just to begin with, what prompted you to become an activist? How did you step forward and say, I don't want to be a bystander, I want to be active in building solutions?
Well, thank you, Peggy, and thank you to the Broadbent Institute for inviting me for this podcast. It's great to, as a young person, to be in one of your podcast recordings, because I think hearing from a young person's perspective is always one of my ways of advocacy. And my activism really started when I found out what it meant for my mom to be a live-in caregiver. So my mom was separated from us when I was 6 years old. So we stayed in the Philippines and she went to Canada to take care of another family. And we didn't reunite until I was 11 years old. As a young kid, I did not know what that meant. I didn't have my mom during one of my significant growth as a young child and as a young girl. And when I found out what it meant for her to be a lived-in caregiver, staying in perhaps someone's basement, taking care of another family. Some families really took care of her. Some families did not. And this was quite a common experience for many Filipinos, specifically Filipino women, that got here as a live-in caregiver and to really try to achieve that Canadian dream. It was one of the start of my realization that injustices do exist, specifically in relation to the Filipino-Canadian community. And that continued on throughout my undergrad. And one of my first professional projects after graduating was the National Forum on Anti-Asian Racism at TMU that took virtually in 2021, I believe. And it stemmed from the anti-Asian racism and violence that escalated due to COVID-19. And I was looking around the room, the virtual room, and I was like, hold on, I was the only Filipino in that room. Mind you, there are lots of countries in Asia, lots of Asians that were affected by this racism and hate that took place. But why am I seeing myself as the only Filipino in that room? Throughout my undergrad, I got this training of being like, if you see something that is wrong, speak up. A lot of Filipinos actually don't like speaking up because we want to be seen as the good Filipino, as the good community member, as the good Canadian who really just follow the rules. And I like following the rules, but if I see something that is wrong, I will speak up for myself, speak up for my community. And I really wanted to make sure that there is someone always there supporting a cause that a lot of people probably do want to talk about, but don't have the guts to do so. And so I was that gutsy person. And so
You
that's
sure
where
are.
my activism started.
So let me ask you though, we hear about living caregivers in Canada and how difficult that is, and that the rules are often stacked against them, and it must have been so incredibly difficult for your mom, but it must have been so incredibly difficult for you as a child. How do you think that changed you as a young girl not to have your mother there? Were you an only child, or did you have brothers and sisters?
I do have one younger sister. So it's my younger sister and I against the world. And I think it really formed a really great relationship between my sister and I. We still live together. We still have a great relationship with our mom. But it showed us that the Filipino community is different because they will take care of you. So my grandparents took care of us, our aunts and our uncles took care of us when we needed it the most.
But you also
And
had to take care of yourself, I bet.
oh, definitely. I had to learn a lot of independence. When we were on our way here in the airport, I was the one, okay, making sure we have the passport, making sure we have the papers ready. And that was me throughout my time here as a teenager, where I would have to call the doctor, I would have to call the dentist, I would have to be the one helping my mom sign my little sister's papers for school. And I basically had to do everything, all administration in the household, because I have the benefit of already knowing English, already trying to find a way to navigate the system on my own. And even throughout undergrad, I had to figure out which program do I want to go into and which university do I want to go to, because my mom was too busy going out there and working. And I understood that. And I think I really want to make sure that future generations of Filipinos are supported in any way that we can to make sure that they're not alone in this process.
So that turned you into a phenomenal organizer. Now I get it. I have worked with you, and you just take on, I was going to say you take on everything, but you organize teams to take on everything and make sure that things get done. That's what I have observed with you. And is that what led you to form or gave you the skills, I guess, in forming the Filipino-Canadian Civic Action Network and Pinoys on Parliament? Is it, first of all, that motivation that Filipinos need to be visible and heard, but also need to be organized?
Yeah, definitely. I think that when the opportunity came in to be a part of the Filipino-Canadian Civic Action Network, or what we like to call it in short is FCAN, so it's easier, and Pinoys in Parliament in short is POP, so it's easier for everyone. I think that I did not hesitate to say yes. First of all, I'm always a yes woman. Peggy, you know this. I like to say yes to any opportunity, especially opportunities to contribute to something. With the upcoming elections, we knew that FCAN was needed by the community. And what that looked like was making sure that we are equipped with the community consultations, which are ongoing, and as well as the research to back up the issues that matter to us. So we wanted to make sure that when we go out in the community, we are equipped with, one, what do they need to know? How do we make sure that they feel empowered and that they are well educated to go to the polls and vote, or support someone else to go vote? Our Filipino-Canadian community is unique because many of us are citizens, but many of us are also still not. Some of us are international students or immigrants or migrant workers. And so we are comprised by such a diverse group of people with unique experiences and backgrounds, and we want to make sure that they are equipped in however they would like to contribute civically and engage in this democratic process. In the Philippines, we have a very active voters because they know that they would like to get engaged and they would like to get their voices heard. And we want that engagement to also travel here. As you know, the low voter turnout continued on in the provincial election, but I think that we are proud to have been one at the forefront of of media through Omni News Filipino and sharing what they need to know for the provincial election, and also encouraging people to showcase that they are going to the polls and they are voting, because it's something that we want to show people that it is easy to vote. It is easy to get out there and get involved. And it's easy as really putting that X mark right beside someone's name. And so that was our most recent engagement with FCAN. And then for POP, it was our 7th year this year. It has been going on for the past 7 years, where hundreds of Filipino youth gather in the nation's capital to meet each other and learn new skills and share knowledge. And we actually saw a bigger turnout this year with over 300 youth attending from coast to coast. And we wanted to make sure we are targeting every province and every territory. If you're a Filipino and if you're out there and you're young, come join us in Ottawa, because it was wonderful to see one of the historic buildings, Sir John A. Macdonald, also known as SJAM, filled with Filipinos in their cultural attires, because we are so proud of who we are. We want us to be more represented on Parliament in every level of government, because we know that we have the voice needed in order to advocate for ourselves, but advocate for all the communities that we are a part of. And so I think that FCAN and the work of POP continues on and will live on for decades to come.
So you're trying to encourage Filipinos to vote, to become involved in elections, and you are familiarizing Filipinos with the kind of the parliamentary process by taking people to Ottawa. Are you focused on trying to get members of your community elected? Is that part of the project? You're smiling. Listeners can't hear you smiling, but I can see you smiling.
Yes, definitely. I think that one of the pet projects that we want to do in FCAN is as a campaign and a candidate school. So in the recent provincial election, we actually saw 3 Filipinos run for office, which was amazing to see. 2 from the ONDP and then 1 from the Ontario Liberal. And unfortunately, none of them succeeded in the election. But I think that seeing them run for office and having so much enthusiasm to run, to represent their communities, and to be a part of this process that a lot of us are not a part of is amazing. And the 2 young New Democrats are young folks that we like seeing. We like seeing young people run for office. And then the other Liberal is someone who has been very enthusiastic in helping out the community in Willowdale. And I think that it is great to see so many of them interested in this process, because right now we currently have 1 Filipino minister and 1 Filipino senator, and no Filipino MPPs and no Filipino Toronto City councillors. And we want to make sure that that changes, because we are one of the biggest sources of immigration here in Canada. We're the 3rd largest, actually. And we want to make sure our voices are heard in those levels of government.
It's interesting, and I'm glad you're redressing it, but it's interesting that, in fact, there is that absence of Filipino Canadians and Filipino voices. It's really striking that there hasn't been a greater presence so far, but it's a real success story to have 300 delegates come to Ottawa and to have candidates run in the provincial election. Are there other success stories you can tell us about? Maybe just part of the engagement program that you're connecting with Filipinos on?
Yes, I think that we have the Minister Valdez and Senator Osler are actually very engaged with Pinoys in Parliament. In a little bit of a logistic when it comes to events planning, but in order to book SJAM, you need a parliamentarian to support you in that process. And the Senator is not hesitant to support us in that. She always welcomes us at Parliament. She welcomes us at the Senate of Canada, because she sees the importance of being physically there and seeing yourself someday being a part of that chamber. So we got to sit 300 delegates in the Senate, sitting in one of those seats that one day will be theirs. And I think we want to make sure that we are encouraging them to run for office, to support behind the scenes, perhaps as a political staffer on the Hill, at Queen's Park, or even at City Hall, because we know the importance of seeing one of us out there there and representing the Filipino community and the local community that they're a part of. But actually last year in 2024, we had an MLA from Manitoba join us, a young Filipina who is currently an elected MLA in Manitoba. It is amazing to see one of us being there, and she's doing her amazing work as an MLA, and we like to support her from afar and making sure that she is well supported by her Filipino community.
That's terrific. I think there's also an MLA in BC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the challenges for the Filipino community to get involved, to have that greater presence in terms of engaging with the political system, both in influencing those who are currently elected or in seeking political office? What are the barriers?
I think the main barrier is Filipinos are busy with work and family. We need to make sure that we are feeding ourselves and our families, and they are very, very busy with work, typically in very high demanding, high stressful jobs in healthcare and in service. And we wanted to make sure that we are reaching out to them. But how do we reach out to people who are working either graveyard shifts at night or super long hours throughout the day?
How do you?
I think is the first thing is meeting them where they're at. So we want to make sure that we are going to the communities where they're at, where they're located, where they live and they work and they eat and they play, because it's up to us to go to them. It's not up to them to come to us, because that's not how providing service works. Providing service for us means going to the people and showing them education and empowerment and how to advocate for themselves. And sometimes when you go to where they're at, you get some free food, because Filipinos are always equipped with really good food that can nourish you throughout the day. And so we wanted to make sure that that's how we do it. With young Filipinos, on the other hand, is the power of social media is huge. And I think that by reaching out to them on these social media platforms where we know are going to be very present in their lives, we try to capture them in a very witty type of way on social media, and even reaching out to influencers that we know are really good contributors to the community and showcasing to them that being politically engaged is a very powerful tool, and a tool that we want to make sure that they are well equipped as they go on to the next step in their professional careers.
So people have very busy schedules, but bringing them together with food or finding them through social media are two effective ways. Are there any other tactics you're using to engage the Filipino community? Anything that you have found as an organizer works especially well?
I think what works well is the word of mouth. I think that in a lot of communities, trust is a really big component of organizing. And when you are going to a community that is built on relationships, you want to make sure that people can trust you in organizing. People can trust you in making sure that you are giving them the right information when it comes to a new system and a new process. And when it comes to the word of mouth and in organizers, it really means a lot for us to know that another person trusts us in this process, and that allows them to encourage others to go to this event, encourage others to volunteer with us, because they know that we are trusted people in the community because of our history. And trust is such a big component, especially when it comes to how hard Filipino community has been, and as a diaspora and as people coming from the Philippines. We have been colonized for over 300 years. We are still reaping the consequences of imperialism. And when it comes to all of the systems, technically the system is against us in every way possible, but we are making sure that when you surround yourself with people that you trust, you are all together, coming together against the system and making sure that it works for you finally. As people, we like to call it as kapwa or as kababayans. It is just a really unique way of community that we are truly proud of.
It sounds like your method of organizing is really like organizing I'm familiar with, like labor organizing, where it's mostly face-to-face and building relationships of trust, building small groups, and kind of a model that builds small groups and expands into the community. I guess organizing is organizing, whatever your goal. What's next on the agenda for FCAN and for POP? Are you taking on the federal election, which is likely imminent. Is there a campaign? Are there going to be Filipino candidates running? What's next on the agenda?
Yeah, so for FCAN, we are taking some lessons that we learned from the provincial election and how we engaged the community there. And we hope to take that on for the federal election. Unfortunately, with the provincial election, it was 28 days. We had a very short timeline when it comes to getting out there. And most importantly, it was in the middle of a lot of snowstorms. So we had to take a lot of our programming virtually. But hopefully with spring or perhaps the summer for the federal election, we can be out there in the community and teaching folks how to vote, teaching folks how to read up the different campaign platforms. And if there is a candidate out there that would like some support when it comes to their upcoming campaign, we are happy to talk to them, to discuss with them on how they can connect further with the Filipino community. And as for POP is actually part of a bigger organization called Kabangka, a not-for-profit organization. It's a Filipinx youth-led and for youth organization that operates nationally. And what we wanted to do with POP was take it away from Ottawa after the event. It's a 3-day event in Ottawa, and we wanted to make sure the work and the action continues after that. And so with Kabangka, we have other initiatives like the mentorship and the leadership in learning programs that allows us to pair up young Filipinos with Filipino leaders in the community and also provide them other workshops and educational resources throughout the year to expand their leadership and learn a little bit more about any skills that they are interested in learning, because we wanted to make sure that our work is throughout the year and not just once a year at POP in Ottawa. So we have a lot of work to do. The work continues on, and we wanted to make sure that after the federal and the provincial election for FCAN, what is next would be trying to look back and see and reflect how and where did we reach Filipinos at, and how can we expand that further on. And the next set of elections would be the municipal election in Ontario in 2026. But at least we have a little, hopefully several months in between elections to really continue on with our community consultation, continue on with our research, and really reflect on how we can continue on this work for the Filipino-Canadian community. It's a really big community, and we want to make sure that we are touching every single one of them in a way that we want them to feel empowered and to feel like they are engaged in this process.
So a big job ahead, a lot of work to do. And for those that are listening who want to be involved in activism or become more civically engaged, what advice would you give, Josel? How can they support FCAN or POP or just get more involved in their community?
I think get involved by volunteering. So all of us, FCAN and POP, are all led by volunteers. Can you believe it? We do this on the side of our desk, on the side of our full-time jobs. And so get involved. We always need the help by coming to one of our events or getting behind the scenes in planning one of our initiatives. And I think that it is very important for us to make sure that we are not the only ones behind the scenes. Filipino community is not a monolith. We have so many experiences and backgrounds, and we need every single one of you out there. And follow us on our social media platforms. And of course, for those who simply want to support us, on top of our work being a voluntary basis, we heavily rely on grants and sponsorships to keep our work going. And so please support us through in-kind and monetary donations. For POP, we are truly grateful because a lot of labor unions actually support us. So we love seeing that. We love seeing our fellow community members supporting us in this, because it is a lot of work, and we are so passionate because we want to continue the work. We want to continue the change that we are seeking in order to make sure that the system works for us. So please get in touch with me, with any of us, any of these organizations, because we want you there too.
Thanks, Josel. On that note, how would people get in touch with you? What's the best way? Are you on X or Blue Sky or every social platform? How do people get in touch?
Well, actually, you'll most likely find me around Toronto in some sort of Filipino events or restaurant.
So face to face.
Face to face. But otherwise, all of my work are visible on Instagram at josel.angelica, Josel.Angelica, and on LinkedIn as well, Josel Angelica, same spelling. And then if you would like to follow us on our other platforms at Phil-Can Civic Action on Instagram and Pinoys on Parliament and Kabangka Canada. So that's Kabangka Canada on Instagram. We would like to see more of you out there. And if you ever are just up for some really good food, we got you. That's one of our main draws.
That alone would be enough of a draw, but changing Canada and transforming politics is an even bigger draw. Josel, thank you so much for all your amazing work. And thank you for taking the time to join us today on Activists Make History.
Thank you. I really appreciate this. And I look forward to seeing you all out there participating in the federal election or out there in a Filipino restaurant eating some good food.
Will do. That shot of organizing energy was Josel Angelica Gerardo, Toronto-based community organizer and member of the Filipino-Canadian Civic Action Network.
Activists Make History is a special podcast series from Perspectives, a Canadian journal of political economy and social democracy, a publication and production of the Broadbent Institute. This show could not have been made possible without the generous contribution of Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union. If you'd like to hear more from Activists Make History, share and subscribe to Perspectives Journal on all major podcast platforms, as well as Press Progress's Sources podcast that digs deeper into the news stories you won't find in the major papers. The Perspectives Journal podcast and Sources are proud members of the Harbinger Media Network, Canada's progressive podcast community. Once again, I'm Peggy Nash, your host for Activists Make History and proud member of the Broadbent Institute's Board of Directors. You can read my latest book, Women Winning Office, An Activist Guide to Getting Elected, from Between the Lines Books.